Hey everybody, Brian Zane here with your Extreme Rules 2017 review featuring a main event that can very well change the course of the new era. Ooh. On the kickoff show, we have Apollo Crews taking on Kalisto in singles action, a rematch from a couple weeks ago on Raw, a continuation of the Kalisto versus Titus brand feud we've been seeing for the last few weeks. Good lucha things being done by Kalisto here. Apollo Crews really starting to show more of this heel swagger about him. He was like playing to the crowd more, posing and stuff, and it was kind of a refreshing change of pace for Apollo to have this kind of new layer, this new dimension added to his character, because he's been such like a white meat babyface, so kind of bland in my opinion. For him to show any kind of attitude or like edge to his character, even in the construct of this Titus brand thing, to me is refreshing. At one point, Kalisto goes for his second rope moonsault. He is caught midair by Crews, puts him in a guillotine hold, lifts him up for a suplex. Kalisto counters it into a small package. Kick out, long way to go for a small package spot. Kalisto hits Crews with a huge DDT, the first of what will be many DDTs throughout the night, but Crews kicks out of that. Apollo then later on hits a beautiful standing shooting star press onto Kalisto, who kicks out of that. And then by this point, Apollo is incensed, he's shocked, he's confused. He goes up to Titus and goes, "What do I do? I did the flip. I did the flip. What else can I do?" And the distraction there allows Kalisto to hit Salida del Sol off of Titus. He posts off Titus, who's on the apron, and hits Crews with his finisher and wins the match. So now over the last 3 weeks, Kalisto is 2-0 against Apollo Crews. This match much more entertaining and competitive than what we had a couple weeks ago. I think this is a fine opening match. I think as a rule now, from now, I'm not going to include pre-show matches at all in my grade overall for the show, because I've been so inconsistent with it in the past. It's not fair. So just for future reference, I'm not counting this match toward the grade, but this was a fine opening match. Intercontinental title on the line as Dean Ambrose defends against The Miz. If Ambrose is disqualified, he will lose the championship automatically. Of course, that's a big crux of the story being told in this match. You know, Miz is trying to goad Ambrose into getting disqualified so he can win the title automatically, but Ambrose's mental resolve is just too strong for the most part. Early on in the match, Miz is getting some heat in, and at one point he's like gently caressing Dean's shoulders before going for the surfboard. At least that's what it looked like to me. I mean, I'm sure it looked like he was actually really putting some pressure on there, but it looked like he was just giving a loving massage at one point. Some dueling chants between Dean fans and Miz fans as the match goes on. It flares up a couple of times at the course of the match. At one point, Dean tweaks his knee after going for a top rope maneuver. The Miz capitalizes on it, goes for a figure four. There's a rope break. Later on, The Miz is doing his yes kicks, but in the final one, Dean blocks it and hits him with his own figure four, and The Miz gets a rope break on that. At this point now, both men are hobbling, which looks pretty funny. Miz goes to Maurice at the apron and says, slap me, slap me. So she slaps him, and the whole idea is they're trying to convince, the referee that, she's interfering on Dean's behalf, attacking The Miz in order to get disqualified so Miz can win the championship, which is what a lot of people predicted would happen. I think, people kind of predicted that, they're gonna have a whole match, and then this is probably gonna happen, and then the match will end, and Dean will lose the championship that way, which would have been very bad. And I think had the match ended this way, yes, it would have been very angry and disappointing, but that was not the case, as the referee started ejecting Maurice, so the plan backfires. So then you've got this point where Maurice is leaving but coming back, and there's this distraction where the referee is leaning out of the ring to try and get Maurice out of the arena. The Miz shoves Dean Ambrose into the referee, so there's this moment where, did you shove me? Being trying to screw Dean Ambrose again, and Ambrose saying, no, I'm not. And then there's this weird point where it's just, there's this drawn out thing where the referee is going to go physically walk over to the timekeeper to end the match, which never happens. That's not how matches end, It's like the whole thing is, if he wanted to disqualify Dean, he would have just signaled for it right then and there from the ring. The referees have the power to do that, you see. So there's a whole drawn out thing where he's walking around the ring, John Cone is, and he's like storming, he's going to the timekeeper, and Dean's saying, no, no, no. And so Miz, with the distraction, hits the skull-crushing finale to win the match and the championship. So he wins without Dean having to get disqualified. But why, I don't get why couldn't the Miz have just waited 5 more seconds for the referee to make the call? Like, it seems kind of weird to have that whole distraction thing when he was going to win the belt no matter what. So a bit of a wonky finish, still a good match. Glad they didn't go with the cheap out of Miz getting slapped by Maurice for the match to end. Mixed tag team action up next as Alicia Fox and Noam Dar take on Sasha Banks and Rich Swann. I do love the fact that every time Alicia and Noam tagged, like their tag was a hug. That to me was just like awesome and adorable. Cole at one point called Noam and Alicia evil, which I thought was a bit of an overstep. bit of an exaggeration. Then he goes like into the entire backstory of the relationship of how Alicia and Noam came to be, and where Cedric Alexander and Rich Swann got involved in all that stuff. Swann, by the way, was the hometown boy, so he gets a nice big reception and ovation from the Baltimore crowd. During the double down, between the men, there's this point where there's double down here, and then there's the point where the women just look at each other and they get in the ring together and they brawl for a bit. Sasha with top rope double knees to Noam Dar, who takes the hit instead of Alicia, which is cool, but I'm like, wait a minute, like the men were legal, the women were not legal. Is that technically like illegal for Alicia to do that? I mean, we've seen, you know, non-legal people hit legal people in tag matches all the time, but it's like the compounding of like it's mixed tag team, it's not intergender, and the fact that Sasha's not legal. I'm probably reading too much into it. I'm just kind of nitpicking. Anyway, after the double knees, Rich tosses Noam into the ring. Phoenix Splash to win the match for the faces. They do a little dance at the end, and it's all well and good. So yeah, it was a solid match. Elias Samson's in the ring. He sings a song that makes some subtle references to the main event later on the night. He opens the song by saying Baltimore is bathed in filth. I think it's a big boo. I love that when when they boo, you see a shot of Samson just kind of looking, kind of like rolling his eyes, or just kind of looking pissed. That was a brilliant look, in my opinion. But yeah, Elias sings a song. That's pretty much all that happens. Raw Women's title is on the line in a kendo stick and a pole match, bro, as Alexa Bliss defends against Bayley. And you know, over the last several months, I've been very on and off in kind of like signaling the end of Bayley in the main roster. Oh, it's the worst ever. Oh, it's okay. It's the worst ever. And so I feel it's been kind of erratic. It's been kind of irrational for me to be up and down like this. But no, this match was like the biggest blow to her character, any semblance of a push you could imagine. I haven't seen character assassination this bad in wrestling since Zack Ryder, and that was pretty bad. This is atrocious, considering how over she was in NXT and how they had lightning in a bottle with her when she made it to the main roster, and she was just kind of like the one holdover from the four horsewomen that everyone wanted to see the main roster. She finally gets there, and she has just never caught a break. And that lack of a break is totally like epitomized in this match. It starts off with Bayley looking like an idiot because Alexa is, you know, gesturing, oh, just walk in and take it. She's being very mocking. She's being very full of shit when she's like, oh, go take the stick. And Bayley goes, okie doke, and just walks over there and gets jumped by Alexa Bliss. That's strike one. Then at one point they're fighting on the top turnbuckle. They're punching each other. They're reaching for it. Bayley actually grabs the kendo stick, but they drop it, and then it's kind of a mad scramble for it. Like, I kind of like this part here. This part of the match was okay. Like, everything up to the point when Bayley got the stick was a fine match because they're fighting, they're doing a mad dash for it. Bayley gets the stick, and then she's just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna hit you with this. See this stick? I'm totally gonna hit her with it. Oh yeah, gonna hit you. For like what felt like 5 minutes, she was just like, oh yeah, it's time for me to get extreme. And then she finally goes for the swing and misses. Alexa gets out of the way, and then Alexa steals the kendo stick and beats the shit out of Bayley with it. And here's the weird thing about this match, is that the whole verbiage in the build for this was like, the first person to grab the stick will legally be able to use it, which to me and a lot of other people implied that the person who did not grab the stick would not legally be able to use it, which is confusing for Extreme Rules, but that's just kind of like, that felt like that was the implied contract here we were all signing into with this verbiage that they were so adamant to push, was legally use the stick. It means the other person can't legally use it. So, but no, Alexa Bliss, who did not grab the stick, by the way, when it was up in the pole, is able to legally beat the hell out of Bayley with it. Bayley ever so briefly comes back with a belly-to-belly out of nowhere. It's a double down. As Alexa's getting up and selling, she's leaning the kendo stick into the corner. She tosses Bayley face first into the kendo stick and then hits her with the DDT, retains the championship. Bayley did not hit Alexa Bliss with a kendo stick once, and she really, in the grand scheme of things, barely did any offense. This was about as close to a squash match as you could get. I've seen Nia Jax squash matches that were more competitive than this match. I don't know what to say about this. Like, it was just terrible. There's so many different ways you could have booked this match and choreographed it that would have had Bayley looking really good, really strong in defeat. I would have been okay with her losing. I expected her to lose, but I didn't expect her to lose so blatantly, so just one-sided, looking like a total doofus from the very first spot where she is invited to climb to grab the stick, and she accepts it. Then the point where she grabs the stick and she swings and misses, and it's just over and over again. This just like looking so dumb. And I get the idea of like maybe pushing people as like, oh, it's a good underdog story. There's a difference between making somebody an underdog looking good in frequent defeat which is what happened to Bayley in NXT and Sami Zayn in NXT. There's a difference between that and just totally just killing their character and making them look like total dweebs in front of the world on this big stage. Time and time again. Like I said, happened to Zack Ryder several years ago, and he never recovered. And that's what's happening to Bayley here, and I just don't know why. The Raw Tag titles are on the line in a steel cage match as the Hardys defend against Cesaro and Sheamus. This match was pretty much the antithesis of everything the preceding match was. This one was actually fun and exciting and physical and had some good attributes and qualities to it. Good use of the cage by both teams in terms of using it as a weapon, as a prop, to prop themselves off of for doing spots. Good stuff all around. The Hardys ramming Cesaro and Sheamus' heads into opposite ends of the cage while the fans are chanting delete. Stereo bass and dropkicks, pretty cool spot there. There's some friendly fire in this match too. At one point, Jeff and Cesaro are on the wall fighting. Sheamus grabs both of them and slams them both off. I guess is the only way possible to make sure Jeff isn't climbing the wall. At one point, all four of the guys are up on the top of the cage. Jeff makes it out first, and the whole thing is both members of the team have to be out at the same time in order for the win to count. And so Jeff gets out first, so it becomes a 2-on-1 situation with Matt. Matt hits a side effect on both members of the team, Cesaro and Sheamus. Then he decides to crawl up the side of the cage. Why? The door's right there. And I know that the door is like the heel exit half the time. But why? It's just one of those cage match logic things that don't make any sense, but it just happens. Sheamus and Cesaro do catch Matt on the side of the cage, throw him down with a double razor's edge. At one point, Jeff's on the top of the stairs on the outside by the door. Sheamus bro kicks the door into Jeff's face, and then here's another lack of logic thing where Sheamus is crawling out through the door, as heels do. Then Matt recovers and grabs him and pulls him back in. And again, why? Like, if the object is to have both members of the team get out in order to win, you could have just shit-canned Sheamus from behind. He would have fallen out, and you could have immediately followed him out. And both Hardys would have been outside, and the match would have been over. It's like, I get that these spots are kind of in place to heighten drama and keep the thing going, but it flies in the face of logic, and it flies in the face of, like, the whole concept of a cage match is to survive and to win. You get the hell out of there as soon as you can, like, however you can. Of course, that lack of logic costs Matt here because he's then hit with a top rope white noise from Cesaro and Sheamus with the assist of the cage to prop them up. Jeff, recovering, climbs the cage from the outside, hits a will-o'-the-wisp from the top onto Cesaro and Sheamus. So you got Cesaro and Sheamus now, they're recovering, they're climbing over the cage, over the wall, while Matt has gotten up and is now trying to drag Jeff's dead body through the ring to get out the door. It's like a chase. It's a race to see who hits the floor first. And Sheamus and Cesaro hitting the floor first, they win the match, they become the new Raw Tag Champs. And it was an exciting match. There was drama there, and there were some really cool spots. But again, there's just a couple of points in the match where it's like, just the lack of logic in cage matches just baffles me sometimes. But it was a good match though. Cruiserweight title on the line as Neville defends against Austin Aries in a submission match. This is the third straight pay-per-view match these guys have had for the title. First was WrestleMania, then was Payback, now this. A pivotal point during the match is when Austin jumps off the top rope onto Neville onto the floor and tweaks his knee, re-aggravating that old leg injury that's been haunting him on and off for the last few weeks here. So for a lot of the match, Neville's attacking the leg and the arm. So he's setting up, some leg submissions, setting the rings of Saturn. So Neville has a lot of options here, but Aries has some moves of his own. He's got some multiple shin breakers on Neville. He does a sick looking dragon screw. He's attacking the legs as well. So both guys are kind of setting up for multiple possibilities for submissions here. At one point, Neville jumps off the top rope. Aries catches him, hits him with a figure four, and there's a rope break. But it's tit for tat though, as Aries goes for a missile dropkick. He whiffs that, and Neville puts him in the rings of Saturn. Aries gets a rope right there. Aries hits Neville with a sunset flip powerbomb out of the corner, hits the last chancery. They slide out of the ring together. Neville's like crawling out of the ring, but Austin still has like a chin lock on him. So then when they get out of the ring together, Austin flips into a last chancery, so he never really breaks the hold. He gets right back into last chancery. Neville is tapping out, but it's on the outside, so it doesn't count. So now Aries has Neville right where he wants him. He goes for a suicide dive on the outside, but he crashes and burns when Neville gets out of the way. So then Neville brings Aries back into the ring, hits a red arrow, and lands right on Aries' back as he's like getting up. It was a sick-looking bump, and so then Aries is locked into the rings of Saturn. Aries taps out, and Neville is still the king of the Cruiserweights, still the champion, and just what an amazing match. This match really had it all. It had like high-flying stuff, it had strikes, it had submissions. It was just like as perfect a Cruiserweight match as we've seen so far on the Raw brand. This is just one of in my opinion, the top match of the night. And my only question is, where do both men go from here? Because Austin Aries is like the only face cruiserweight right now that has any star power and any name recognition, and probably the only person that could have conceivably dethroned Neville here. So now Neville, who do you have left for him? Because he's beaten everybody 2 times over. You've got TJP who's lurking in the shadows because he was kind of helping Neville with some stuff, and now like he seems to be the next one in line because like he was helping Neville to get that title shot. But Neville just turned heel. Is he going to turn face again? Like, I don't know what's going to happen here, but a lot of intrigue and curiosity as it pertains to the cruiserweight title scene, which I never thought I'd say. Main event time, an Extreme Rules Fatal 5-Way match to determine who will face Brock Lesnar at Great Balls of Fire for the Universal Championship. It was Roman Reigns, Finn Balor, Seth Rollins, Samoa Joe, and Bray Wyatt. This match, along with the Cruiserweight title match, in my opinion, was one of the top matches of the night. I think it was neck and neck between this and Cruiserweight title match for match of the night. In my opinion, I think all 5 guys really brought it. There was very little wasted motion or wasted effort. Very little, if any, downtime or like time for resting for the audience, because there's like just constantly stuff going on here. Good stuff all around. There's a great spot at the beginning when like everyone but Roman Reigns is fighting each other and on the outside fighting, and Roman Reigns is in the middle of the ring standing, just looking around like, yeah, feeling pretty confident about himself there. Some great indiscriminate stomping, as Corey Graves described it, as Finn Balor was stomping on Joe and Bray and Seth as they were all trying to make their way in the ring, and Finn was just jumping up, stomping on all of them. Throughout the whole match, you got Samoa Joe and Bray Wyatt having another alliance thing because they're the 2 heels in the match. Did Joe learn nothing from last couple of weeks on Raw? I don't get his thought process here, but they do have a nice little tandem action here. They take out Reigns early on with running steel step attack. They spend a lot of time 2-on-1 against Finn Balor, and like they're taking turns like doing sentons onto a chair, which is on Finn Balor. So each of them take their own kind of chair shot. That was interesting. But yeah, it's just like between these 2 are just beating the hell out of pretty much everyone who gets in their way, especially Finn. The alliance between the 2 is very tenuous with the whole match, as they're kind of doing uneasy looks at each other between spots, but it finally reaches the breaking point when at one point Rollins does a suicide dive to the outside on toward Bray and Joe, but Bray just shoves Joe into the path and saves himself. Joe recovers eventually, and these 2 start fighting, finally have their big blow up, but the fighting between the 2 does not last for very long as Finn returns and just goes on the warpath of the chair, beating up everybody. Then it's time for everyone to get their crazy shit in, because you got Samoa Joe with the coquina clutch on Balor on the outside by the timekeeper's area. Reigns from out of nowhere spears the 2 of them through the barricade, and while that's going on, you have Seth Rollins hitting a frog splash from the top rope onto Bray Wyatt through the announce table. And it was a big spectacular couple of spots back to back. So you've got this moment with Reigns and Rollins, the only 2 men left standing, very reminiscent of their match on Raw last week, which was a great match, and this was kind of a continuation of that. A lot more trading finishers between the 2 of them here. Bray and Finn gradually re-enter the match as this is happening. Finn does hit Roman Reigns with the big dropkick to the corner, hits him with the coup de grace, and you think he's going to win the match, but all of a sudden Joe comes in from out of nowhere, hits the coquina clutch on Finn Balor. No one else is around. Finn Balor passes out, and Samoa Joe wins the match and is going to face Brock Lesnar for the championship at Great Balls of Fire. And I was just in shock. It was a good shock, but it's like, wow, that's awesome. Because, you know, Joe, I don't think has been built, like, he hasn't won a lot of his matches, but I mean, he's always been built to look very strong in his matches. Whether he wins or he loses, he winds up killing his opponents, essentially. So I think he's been protected in a sense. But I think just he was probably the last person I would have picked to win this match, really. So for him to win it was a shock. It was a welcome surprise. I'm really excited now about the prospect of Samoa Joe and Brock Lesnar fighting each other for the championship. That match, I think, I could be wrong, but I think is going to be dope. Time now for my final thoughts on Extreme Rules 2017. I think I'm going to give a final grade of B- for this show. I would have graded it higher, but there were a couple of things that were just glaring cons in my opinion. First, obviously, the women's title match, Bayley and Alexa Bliss. I don't need to go into too much detail beyond what I said earlier about it, but wow, R.I.P. Bayley. Next, there were just a couple of just weird, questionable booking and logic decisions throughout the show. I mean, for example, the Intercontinental title match. If The Miz was going to get his way and win the championship by disqualification, which was his plan all along, as the referee was walking over to make the call, then why did he bother hitting Dean with the skull-crushing finale to actually win the match? It just seems it was more work for him than it needed to be. I guess it was kind of an adding insult to injury thing, he's proving to Dean he can beat him either way, but that was just, that's I think a little too nuanced, I think, for this particular storyline. Then there was the steel cage match with, a couple of times when, the Hardys could have and and should have won, but then just, just the need to implant more drama and tension into the match by having them kind of do these things that are counterintuitive to what you would do to win a steel cage match. Just that kind of stuck in my craw. But that aside, the stuff that was good was really good. I mean, other than the women's title match, I don't really have any complaints about any of the stuff we saw on the show, except for a couple like minor nitpicks with the finishes, because I thought the Cruiserweight title match was amazing. I thought that the main event was also great, just non-stop action the entire time. The mixed tag match was still entertaining, the Intercontinental Championship match and the cage match, even though they had little weird finishes and weird points in it, they were still really fun, exciting matches to watch. The great physicality of the cage match was awesome. I thought that everyone did a really good job, except for the women's title match, but I've already said enough about that. So yeah, I mean, I think everything, with the exception of some small things here and there and one big thing, made Extreme Rules to me a fun show to watch. And again, I think the kickoff show with Kalisto and Cruz was fun, but that's not going into the final grade. So yeah, I will give Extreme Rules a B- for this time around. Let me know what you thought about Extreme Rules in the comment section below. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it. Subscribe to Wrestling with Regret. Buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com, including the brand new No Entrance, No Victory shirt. And check out the Patreon page, where for just as little as $1 a month, you can help support Wrestling with Regret and get some exclusive perks. Go to patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret to learn more. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.